Bishop Paul, first of all, congratulations. We're coming a bit late to the party, but congratulations
It's still
nonetheless,
ongoing.
and will be for a bit longer.
I know, yeah.
Can I ask you how you're marking this milestone? What are you doing to actually recognize the fact that you've attained or achieved this great?
Well, 25 years is a long time, but it has flown. And what I'm really trying to do is there's personal renewal in it, to reinvigorate my ministry in partnership with the other people in the diocese to give it a new kickstart. The last thing you want is to say, oh, well, I've clocked up 25 years, that's that, now I can coast. So I've been identifying a couple of things that I've been trying to do and putting them before the diocese. And in order to do that, I've been going out, and it's now impossible in any ordinary year to visit everybody. So the target this year is to meet as many people from the diocese as possible. And then I have a few things that I've highlighted. One is in the wake of the pandemic to try and renew commitment to church going and church involvement. That's one thing. Another thing that I'm trying to focus on is children's and family ministry as of prime importance, especially against the backdrop of changing attitudes to religious education and to the involvement of churches in schools. And the third thing, which is quite a simple thing, is the trees. Which is something tangible, and I said, well, we'll do the trees. I had been doing trees before. I did trees last year, 300, not personally planted last year, but in partnership with a charity. So trees have been a bit of a thing of mine for a while, and that integrates, of course, with the fifth mark of mission about God's creation and the earth, renewing creation.
But it also involves others. The children love all of that.
Yes, and that actually intersects with things that concern children because they're hearing about climate change, they're experiencing climate change, they're hearing about the fragility of it all, and they're facing into that fragility. And I often say to them that you are the ones who will have to have the vision and invent the things and come up with the ideas to solve some of these things that our generation have either failed to solve or problems we've actively caused. And an example I often give when I go to schools is this. I say, when I went to school, the plastic bag was invented and we thought it was great. Now we know it's not so great. So and children love hearing stories of the past, and they latch on to that. Even yesterday I said in a school, when I was at school there was no telephone in the school, and their eyes are out on stalks.
What is the reaction to you when you walk into a school and the kids are sitting there and they're wondering, who is this person? What does this person do? How does this person fill his day?
Yeah.
Do they ask awkward questions?
Well, they ask all that. And I learn so much from the children. And of course, a lot of them have seen me before because we have an annual service where the senior pupils come. And so they've seen me before in churchy settings. Personally, I find it's important to go to the school as a bishop, looking like a bishop, rather than a department official or a school inspector or some senior teacher, because they get inspectors in all the time. So I go wearing my purple cassock and I bring a simple wooden crozier with me because that's what they expect you to look like. They're not in the least bit surprised by the crozier because they've been chatting about it,
and it's reflected in some of the gifts that you've received.
Absolutely, absolutely, it is. Yeah, and
I mean the house is coming down with them.
I mean, even yesterday I found myself in marzipan on top of a cake with a crozier. And as well as that, a Manchester United football. So it's rooted in what they do their detective work. In one school I was in last week, they had various things. Oh, you travel a lot, so we put an airplane on the thing, but we also know you have an electric vehicle, so we drew your car on it. And then again, Manchester United always figures, and always now, because I wear them in this diocese, a mitre, and of course carry the crozier. So yes, going into the schools and to come back to the trees, children are concerned about that sort of thing. And yesterday, for example, I planted an oak sapling in a school that had been grown by a family at home, and it was only about 2 years old. So, not all of the trees are bought from garden centres. That's now the second sapling that I've planted where that have been grown at home from acorns, and we make a thing of it. And then usually, if it's a big tree, I get the children to help me because the hole can be very big. It could be a metre square, and I say, now let's all put some soil in, and let's all do. And of course, some of the schools have green committees. So this is all, it intersects with their agenda.
And
But it
how,
also intersects with the worldwide Anglican program at the moment, the Communion Forest, which the Archbishop of Canterbury launched at the last Lambeth Conference
now
back
you've
in
set the
March.
bar really, really high. How are you going to maintain that level of engagement, that level of activity beyond the 25?
Well, it helps. You just have to obviously like what you're doing. You have to be driven by the sense of calling and mission. But it's a very basic human thing. You have to like people. To me, you have to want to be with people and out there with people and meeting people and chatting to them. And I suppose, to use an old-fashioned word, but a very human word, you have to be a bit nosy about people, who they are and what interests them, and so on. So often I would, because Ireland has changed so much, often I would go into a classroom and say, how many languages are spoken at home here besides English and Irish? We'll take our English and Irish as a given. And then, well, only yesterday somebody said, well, you can't take English as a given because my friend doesn't have English yet in the classroom, because there's somebody has just arrived, from a background, and they don't yet have English. He said he doesn't have English yet. So then we say, how many languages are in one classroom in one small school? We came to 27 languages, one small Church of Ireland school. And that's amazing. It gives you an idea of the diversity. And that's one of the big changes in 25 years. It started to change, I think, when I was a rector in West Dublin in the 1990s. And the first group of refugees to arrive were people from the war in the Balkans, Bosnia, Serbia, and they arrived. Um, and that's really when I became interested in helping people who were displaced, often as a result of war.
How important, in your view, is it to open our doors, open our hearts to people who come to Ireland to find a safe home, a safe haven?
Well, to me, it's very important, but it's not unfettered either. I mean, we need a better system and we need a good system, and people need to get answers quickly. And so there does need to be filtering to see who really does need help. And for me, my approach is as well as, not instead of. So people will say, well, we have to help our own first. Of course, we do have to help our own, but that's not instead of helping other people. It's as well as. you know. So those simple words, I think, are important, as well as. And to me, the problems that are innate in our society, they're there anyway to be solved, and they are challenges to be solved. Yes, more the population growth, which isn't only because of net migration. I mean, Ireland's population has gone up. The problems are there about shortage of doctors, shortage of teachers. All of those problems are there that for us to work on houses. Those problems are there. They're not caused by people coming here to live.
You reached out in a very practical way, and you spearheaded a very meaningful project to refurbish houses to make them into homes for Ukrainian refugees.
Mm-hmm.
How big a task was that? How monumental a project was that to undertake?
Well, I think the important thing that I'd want to say first of all about that is that that was part of a pattern that goes back centuries in this diocese. So it wasn't just a knee-jerk thing to help Ukrainians as a new issue. This small diocese has had two housing charities, and has had a number of charities over the years to help people with economic hardship and so on. Going right back, I mean, the oldest one goes back to 1682. So this wasn't a bolt out of the blue to help Ukrainian strangers. I mean, there had been this tradition for centuries of helping people who needed houses or who needed a dig out in life, and that, so it's part of a pattern. And then the war in Ukraine started, and we said, well, we have this framework, and as it happens, we have these houses which we haven't been able to use of late because we hadn't the resources. We couldn't get anybody, funnily enough, to give us the money to do them up for local people. People often say, well, why didn't you do it for Irish people? Well, the answer was simple: people wouldn't give us the money to do it for Irish people, no matter how. We'd been asking for years for help to do those houses up. But funnily enough, in the immediate aftermath of the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, there was enormous goodwill, and we raised a lot of money in a very short period of time to do those houses up, and that's ongoing. But I would want to emphasize that it's part of a wider economy of charitable support and outlook within this county. Centuries of support, and not just in housing and economic hardship, but also in terms of healthcare, because this diocese has been involved in St. Luke's Home is there now more than 150 years, caring for people with dementia and older people. And of course, we were the founders of the Victoria Hospital, which was part of the South Infirmary Victoria University Hospital. So we still had that. So there were all these facets of involvement. So the Ukrainian one just sort of slithered in. It wasn't the main thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
And what was the reaction whenever those unfortunate people arrived to find they had a roof over their heads?
Well, the government asked people to help, and so we said, well, we'll try and do our bit, and we found ways to help. I think about 14 families. Now, keep in mind that the Church of Ireland population in County Cork is only 13,000 people out of about 500,000. So 14 doesn't sound a lot, but it is a lot for a small community to do. And by and large, the majority of people were very, very, very supportive. Obviously, there were people who said, "Oh no, why are you doing this?" and and all of that. But well, you've already had my outlook on that.
25 years a bishop, but your track record extends beyond that by some distance. Can I ask, what were the high points and what were the low points for you in your clerical career?
The whole career. I mean, I'm 40 years ordained this year as well. So, but against the 25,
Another reason to celebrate.
another reason to celebrate more cake. All of my highlights are to do with people, I think, and often to do with people in liturgical or pastoral settings, be they big or small. And I still remember the first person I visited in hospital as a deacon 40 years ago. I still remember that person's name. Visited them on the 5th of July 1984 in Surgical 3 in the Lagan Valley Hospital. So they're all to do with people, and often in the highs and lows and the joys and so on of life. So all my highlights, certainly one way or another, are to do with people and being with them. Definitely there have been challenges too, I was working in Northern Ireland at the time of the Enniskillen bomb. I was in St. Anne's Cathedral. I was a curate in Lisburn. I was a boy from Cork working in Lisburn in the mid-1980s, and the year after the Anglo-Irish Agreement, and there was a bonfire, and I recognized the politician on the top of the bonfire because his daughter had been at university with me. So that was a bit of a culture shock, And then, of course, the ceasefires, the Canary Wharf bomb, all of those things then, and then the Omagh bombing. Um, I think the big things in the 25 years, if you were to ask me what I'd pick out as the biggest changes, I would say, well, Google was invented, so to speak, the week before I was elected bishop. And it and social media and smartphones have changed everything. And I would say that's the most dramatic change sociologically for me in the 25 years. The other things that I would pick out obviously would be 9/11, the collapse of the economy in 2008, whatever, and more recently the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, Brexit. So there have been those have been challenges. Uh, and as I said, for me, those things all tie in with how they affect people. I mean, we've had people who, because of Brexit, have left this diocese and have gone back to live in the UK, and that's our loss. They were good church workers here, and just small things arising from Brexit meant that it was easier for them to go back.
You mentioned Google and social media and the changes that have come about in a relatively short space of time. You've embraced social media, I think it's fair to say, more than most. Some people are afraid of it. You decided this was something that you had to manage, that you had to successfully navigate. Now, you acknowledge, I think, there are difficulties and challenges
Huge
in doing
challenges.
so.
Yeah.
But how important is it to actually use what's there to communicate with not just your own immediate followers, worshippers, the church, but also the broader society that wants to know what the Bishop Paul is doing?
Well, my father used to teach me that nearly everything can be used for good or bad. And he used to say, that somebody's getting up today to do something good and somebody else is getting up somewhere else in the world to do something bad. And I learned that from my father. And early on, I embraced email. I saw some potential, even to the point in the early days when one of the senior clergy, and I was a junior rector in Dublin Diocese, one of the senior clergy said to me, said, I suppose you have that email thing. I said, I do actually. And the person said, oh, it'll never take off, was the person's response. And that was in the early 1990s. And even when I was in Belfast in the 1980s, the late 1980s, I told somebody that I was moving from a DOS operated computer to a Windows. Oh, Windows, that'll never take off. So twice in my life, I've been told of things that wouldn't take off, Windows and email. And now we know where we are. Yes, and I was. This is also another place where you can harness the talent of young people because they are there and they, the young man in the parish in Dublin, and he did a website for us. I think we were the first parish in Ireland of any church to have a website. No, it was very clunky and basic, but we had it. And now we know how essential all that is and everything. I don't know how people survive now without a smartphone. Even I stayed in a hotel the other day, and if I wanted to know anything from the hotel, I had to take out my smartphone and scan a QR code that was stuck to a desk. And the world has moved on. And so, actually, when I arrived as bishop, the first in-service training course I organised for clergy and lay church workers was um, a very basic course in computers. I said, we'll get everybody now on email, it'll help. And there's even now another bishop who says that I forced him to engage with computers. Now he's never off email.
It's a positive sign. It's progress.
Exactly. So yes, but again, there are dangers and risks as well, that you have to be conscious of. But I find that, for instance, and things move. I mean, my son says, "Oh, Facebook is for people your age who want to fight with one another." And of course the youngsters prefer pictures, so they're on Instagram. And I find that, I've now confirmed about 3,500 people from the diocese, and some of the ones I first confirmed are in their early 40s and living all around the world. And that's the way they keep in touch. And I say, "Oh, you're in Australia. Are you there now?" "Yes, I'm here all the time now." And so the conversation continues.
But you're not put off by the negativity that's associated with X,
Well, I'm
with
dismayed by how toxic X, formerly known as Twitter, has become. It really is. And the anonymity. I know there are people who say, "Oh, well, I couldn't be on it other than anonymously," but I do think that the anonymity, on balance, empowers people to be people they wouldn't be face to face with somebody, and that aspect of it I do not like. So, frankly, if someone doesn't have a real name and a real picture and isn't identifiable to me, I don't engage.
um, obviously you do a lot of driving, a lot of traveling around the diocese. Do you ever get fed up of all the driving?
I don't mind traveling in the diocese. I'm not particularly fond of long drives, especially now as I get a little bit older. I get tired and it takes longer. That's one of the good things about an electric car. It forces you to have brakes, longer brakes. So you don't just stop and fill up with diesel or petrol. You stop for a longer period. So I was in Armagh at the weekend, and you'd stop and maybe sit for 40 minutes, have a wee doze. And so that's good about that. I'm not keen on air travel. Not keen on air. I prefer trains and ships.
Is there any truth in the rumour that you have some very senior politicians on speed dial, that your level of engagement in Cork is, shall we say, of a very high order?
Well, I'm here a long time, so I get to know them, and then we work together. So sometimes when you get to work with people, it suits to be able to WhatsApp and to text.
I think we leave it there. Bishop Paul, thank you very much indeed, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.